actual after the temple was destroyed, Gamliel actually was a proponent to continue Passover just in the home, continue to have the lamb, and but they ultimately overruled, said, you know what, no, because the temple's destroyed, it needs to transpire in the temple, and so I thought that was interesting. I hadn't read that before.
Because after the Exodus, sacrifices can only be where God's name is.
Right, which was a sign,
and
or the tabernacle and the temple.
So it would not be correct to have it any other way.
Right. So that's what they ruled. Basically, says no, it needs to be this way. So,
and that makes sense, even on a sanitary perspective. You know, I mean, you can't just have open slaughter. At everybody's house. You know,
but that's done every day when they were eating.
Yeah.
I mean,
they don't go to the butcher.
Well, that's the thing. Well, some butchers, some people did it themselves, you know, so it would have been
Well, I
normal.
mean, just imagine everybody's slaughtering something and your neighbor's slaughtering, everybody's next door to each other, and you have all the blood and everything.
What happened anyway?
I mean, but the sanitary conditions with today's diseases and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, back then they didn't have the kind of things that we kind of have today. We've kind of decayed a little further down. I was just saying about the sanitary aspect of it, you know. But now they didn't have Passover while they were in the wilderness. But that's what they didn't. They had the regular sacrifice, but I don't think that. Did they have Passover in the wilderness? I don't know.
I would have
That's
thought
why
so.
I'm asking.
Well, they had 40 years of thing. I don't know why they wouldn't.
Well, here's the thing. Because in Joshua, you know, the Torah portion, it says they did two things after they crossed over the Jordan. One, they circumcised all the males, because none of them from the second generation got circumcised while in the wilderness. I found that real surprising. They didn't.
Yeah.
And then right after the circumcision and the healing process, it says that they hung out there and until they got healed up. They had Passover. See, and then you have a repeat performance of that in the book of Ezra when they come back from Babylon, and first they build the altar, you know. And then after they build the altar, before they even get the foundations of the temple laid, the first thing that they do is have Passover. You know, so it seems like when they aren't in the land, you know, like in Leviticus 23, there's a number I didn't go and reread every one, but it says, don't do this until you enter into the land. Don't do this until you enter into the land. So on and so on. And there's quite a few of them. But Passover, because it's not a Levitical feast per se, or a Levitical sacrifice, it's a sacrifice you do and I do, it's not really addressed. It's addressed in 23. I'm sorry, it is addressed in 23.
It definitely is, yeah.
But do they do it when they're in the wilderness?
That's a really good question.
Because they didn't do it in Babylon.
Well, that makes sense. It wouldn't be in Babylon for sure. But
as a matter of fact, they didn't even know Torah yet after Babylon. Ezra had to discover it. He didn't even. He's going, okay, let's read. Aha! This is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And so then they all did it.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know.
Huh. Gosh, it sure would seem like they would have done that, especially since they just, this came out. But it's true. I mean, they're roaming around for 40 years.
Yeah, let's see, it is 50 days till Pentecost, and then after that, then he came down with the instructions as to how to build it, and then it took another year, approximately.
Yeah, which is
right.
Yeah.
So where would they have had it at before?
Wouldn't have had it before.
Would they have skipped a year? I'm not trying to stump you.
I don't know. That's a joke.
And I didn't ask Google either. I didn't.
What's funny is that would be
because I'd get 1,000 speculative papers.
Exactly right.
Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Honestly, because it's just kind of one of those things you assume that it would have just done. But there was numerous things that didn't happen until they were in the land.
Until they were in the land.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so the only consistency...
And this whole group anyway was already being kind of like, well, you ain't going in anyhow.
So what was the Joshua reference again? What's the Joshua?
On, you're talking about for the
Passover.
I don't know, was there one?
Yeah.
Oh, 5:2.
Yeah, 5:2. That's where it talks about where they...
Yeah, the Torah portion.
First they came in, and then they circumcised every male because none of them were circumcised. We're dealing with the second generation.
Israel was circumcised. Now came in all the kings of Amorites. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, make for yourselves flint knives, circumcised again. Wait a minute, what does that mean? Again, the
That's
sons of
interesting. How do you get a double circumcision?
Make for yourselves flint knives and circumcise again the sons of Israel the second time.
That's interesting.
So Joshua made himself flint knives and circumcised them. Like give it. This is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Egypt were all males. All the men of war died in the wilderness along the way after they came out of Egypt. For all the people who came out. All the people who came out were circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness along the way as they came out had not been circumcised. So
they had not been circumcised in the wilderness.
The sons of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, that is, the men of war who came out of Egypt, perished because they did not listen to the voice of the Lord. Okay, and the children raised up in their place.
Now we're at the Passover.
Where are we at here?
So after they got healed, they hung out there.
When they finished circumcising, all that nation remained in their place till they were healed. And the Lord said, Joshua, today I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. So the name of the place is Gilgal this day. While the sons of Israel camped at Gilgal, they observed the Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the month of the desert plains of Jericho. And on the day after the Passover, on that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened cakes and parched grain. And the manna ceased. Wow, how about that? Mm-hmm. And the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten some of the produce of the land.
God shut it off.
So that's fascinating. So we had actually the manna continuing all the way through, even they crossed it until they began eating in the land.
Of the produce of the land.
Huh. God
fed them until they were able to self-sustain.
That's funny. I know I've read that before, but then I just didn't think about that again. When Joshua and Jericho lifted his eyes and looked to behold a man standing opposite him. Sword drawn. Are you for us or are you an adversary? I'm just reading the rest of that thing.
Oh.
No, rather indeed. Come now as captain
of
the host of the Lord. Yes. Cool.
I kept on reading it because, I mean, you have this wonderful battle plan that's constructed that the Lord... That makes absolutely no sense,
of course,
humanly speaking. Right. But it's God's battle plan.
Oh yeah.
You know, and incidentally, within God's battle plan, Jesus is telling Joshua, "This is what you're going to do," and wouldn't you know it? It seems as though all the Torah was suspended, temporarily suspended, because the Levites aren't supposed to go into battle. But guess what? They're the first ones.
They lead.
You know,
but and God's
and
are they actually fighting?
No, God does the battling.
Right.
But and then they also break Sabbath as well. On the seventh day, they did 7 times the amount of work. You see, on the seventh day, so they broke Sabbath 7-fold. On top of that,
you know, do you actually break it if the Lord's instructed you to do it?
No. But according to this, you know,
think about that.
They're
just like any element of a thing like that. Yeah, God instructs specifically to break Sabbath when it is
appropriate.
Like,
yeah. But the point is how portions of the Torah were actually suspended for a higher purpose.
Right, and tons of it. If you start thinking about it, all is getting laid out there. There's so many things they couldn't do.
And it was suspended by God Almighty himself.
Right.
You know.
Which makes perfect sense that it would happen.
He's the only one that would have the authority to suspend it.
Makes sense, doesn't
Joshua couldn't suspend it. He doesn't have that level of authority.
No, Moses couldn't have either.
No, he wouldn't have that level of authority.
Yeah.
You know.
That's funny to think about, though. Well, I think you're right, though. I don't think there was any through there, because there is no indication, at least that I've read another spot where there was observing it.
If you go through Numbers, Deuteronomy, any of it, there's nothing that comes to mind that would indicate.
That would be interesting to...
They do the other sacrifices.
Right, well, they're just getting them started. They're just getting things going there.
So now, because I don't know for certain, and I don't think you know for certain, that's not we can't make any definitive statement in that regard. Until somehow, some way, we would know kind of definitively.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I want to look that up.
And interestingly, what would that mean if they didn't have Passover in the land, because God doesn't do anything accidental? So what would that mean to say that when you're not in the land, there is no Passover?
There's so many things that were specifically there. Now, the diaspora then, but still, you'd have to, even if in the diaspora, that's part of the thing. So many of the diaspora at the time of Jesus, they're all coming into Jerusalem from all over the place.
Yeah, but there's no diaspora yet. That doesn't happen until
not until later. But I'm just saying that of things occurring need to occur in the land. But that still was the case where you actually had Pesach happening, even though it could be observed later on in the diaspora, but couldn't be fully observed not without the lamb. Yeah, so it had to occur in
It's
Jerusalem.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
any of the pilgrimage feasts or whatever, they had to be happening in Jerusalem.
So.
No, the pseudo observance of them in the diaspora, it's only a partial observance of it. Because doesn't matter what any of them were.
Yeah. Because I can't remember where it was written that sacrifices are to be done where my name is. I can't remember where that is.
Oh, where that actually is
referenced. That is located.
Seemed like we just read it recently.
Yeah, where my name is. And God's name isn't in the wilderness. He is dwelling on Mount Sinai, but that's not.
Though, he's with them, traveling.
He's with them
entirely.
But is his name written there? See, because they're mobile.
Well, they're very mobile on there, but
they keep uprooting and moving and setting down and uprooting and moving. So the question is,
couldn't be any closer to the Lord's presence than there.
No, that's true. But is his name placed there? Because if I remember right, God said to Moses, "Be careful that you don't offend this cloud, because my name is in him." But him is in the cloud and the pillar of fire, and him would pick up and move, and they would pick up and move with him.
Yeah.
So if his name is in him, but is in that place.
Well, that's the thing.
Or am I splitting hairs?
You're splitting a big hair.
I'm not sure I am.
Well, the thing is, though, it's not the official, but it is the assigned place. That's the Mikdash. That's where it's going to.
I mean, the altar is there.
Right. That's where all the activity is going to transpire with regard to.
God gives them the instruction on how to do the altar and the precision of it. We're going through it.
Oh yeah.
So
I can't imagine it not being or this, but still, I'm not just throwing that out there. Did they actually observe Pesach through the wilderness?
I don't know. I honestly didn't.
That's a funny question.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I never thought about it before.
We kind of make assumptions on Scripture.
And my gosh.
And
all the time.
And I think this is one of those assumptions. Then when you ask the question, you go, geez, I'm not sure. I never even thought to look it up.
Yeah.
Like firstborn. We always think about the firstborn being males because it's said all the time, your firstborn males and all that.
Firstborn males.
But in Passover, it says all your firstborn, period.
Not
and when you look up the firstborn, it's Adam. It's not.
Right.
It's mankind.
Yes.
Which means that would be both male and female.
Right.
Whether it be of animals or whether it be of human beings, whether it be in the land of Goshen, which is part of Egypt, or in Egypt plural, or Egypt specific, connotatively or denotatively, and that there was not one household that was not touched.
Yes.
Yeah.
Assumptions all over the place.
We do make some assumptions that maybe, like I made an assumption. You were mentioning that how those priests may have come out with Israel. I said, and I made the comment, well, in order for that to happen, they had to be covered under the blood. Not necessarily. What if they weren't firstborn? I could be that could be a really big. Well, if they weren't firstborn, so they didn't perish. What if they were posers and stayed in one of the houses of the Jewish people? What if they were posers? So they're kind of under the blood, but they're not. They're trying to come in through the back door. In other words, by being a thief and a robber. So
sneaking up another way? Huh?
Yeah, they're trying to sneak in another way, and they got exposed. So they didn't necessarily have to be by, covered under the blood, specific.
But they were.
But they were. But did they have to be if they weren't firstborn? See, if they weren't firstborn, they wouldn't have had to been, because their brother would have died or their sister would have died instead.
Was the older of them, yeah.
So maybe that was a bad assumption on my part.
Well, you think about that because you have a bunch of folks that were, that were second-born, third-born, whatever things, but they still were being instructed to be a family and be there. It was just going to be the death of the firstborn. It wasn't mean that you were going to die.
These are all the things I've been thinking about this week.
Oh, yeah.
My mind's been a little active pertaining to some of these questions and assumptions that I've made.
You just assume that are right. In other words, just start asking the question on there, which is very good to do.
Yes, it truly is. What is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some of my questions are not resolved.
No, and guess what?
And they might not be. I'm not sure.
It's fun when something does get resolved, but I can throw out a whole bunch more here. Especially start looking at certain. I don't even want to go. I was just thinking because I've been going through Passover, the time period of Jesus, whatever things, and the discrepancies that exist between John and the Synoptic Gospels, and the timing of things and when stuff's occurring, and a lot of different assumptions there. That's an interesting.
That's something I've thought about in the past. I didn't think about too much this year. I've thought about in the past, the seeming discrepancies, and I really don't think. On the surface, they seem as though they're discrepancies,
but it's pretty. There's between John and the Synoptics, it's a tough thing to reconcile with regard to the way timings are communicated, because of the very explicit statement. This is going to be celebrating the Seder meal. I will have the Passover meal with you, but the timing of that.
But what if it wasn't the Passover meal? What if it was a prelude to the Passover meal? There was such a meal.
But it doesn't say it's a Passover prelude to a Passover meal. It says it's a Passover meal. I think Jesus said this. I look forward to having the meal with you. Yeah.
So there's that we can have that discussion a little later. But there's some things that are very intriguing pertaining to that.
Oh yeah.
And I don't want to add to anybody's confusion, but there is some resolve that can be found there.
Oh yeah, there actually is, but for full resolution between the two, there will, I think, an existing tension can exist with that without it being, because I have no problem with it being an actual Passover Seder, but there's some real strong biblical teachers say no, it couldn't have been a Seder, couldn't have been an actual Passover meal, but it was like, I think it is. But,
and I'm on the opposite side of the coin. I'm pretty well convinced that it most likely was not.
No, I believe it was.
Yeah,
because there's some poor speculation of that, but it takes some good diligent study within the Second Temple time period, drawing things from the Mishnah of what they would have done and timing and stuff, and what's communicated through the Synoptics. Because if you hold just to John, then you would lean more towards that it wouldn't have been a Seder meal. But the Synoptics are pretty strong that it was.
There's one passage that just flat out says, this is Passover.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't doubt that whatsoever.
I
just think there's a little more to it that's going on.
Oh, certainly.
Because we're so far removed from little, like you said, the Second Temple period, we're so far removed from, and a lot of it is, like a lot of this, you won't find in Scripture. A lot of this is good, solid tradition.
Yeah, but it's just it's tradition.
Right. And I think the same thing applies in the Second Temple period, that there were some things going on that now we're so far removed from that we may never fully know until we get to the other side. And then he goes, this is what we were talking about. And we're like, yeah, you know, yeah, why didn't I see that one coming? You know,
yeah, it's so true.
But there's some things that we know that there were 2 Sabbaths being observed that week.
Not very.
You know,
I mean, that's
because Passover is counted as a Sabbath on top of the regular Sabbath.
Right. The day of preparation.
And then we have the 8th day, the day after the Sabbath, early in the morning. He's discovered, guess what? He's not in the tomb. That's Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You know, and he did rise on Sunday morning.
Been Saturday night.
Yeah. And then you have the calendar thing. And okay, are we talking about evening? Are we talking about... See, and we're doing the math in our head.
That's one of the traditions that developed through the years, whatever, of having a Easter sunrise service.
Yeah.
That was that I always have to. I don't laugh at it, but it's just like it says, "Oh, that's fine, Danny, celebrate there." But he had already risen.
Yeah, it says they went early in the morning. He is already gone. Mm-hmm. Say already gone. Oh, yeah. It's not like they saw him. No. You know.
Yeah, with the sun, I mean, obviously the imagery along with it, the sun rising, S-U-N, rising with...
Yeah.
But it was like, wow, just think of all the people that lost sleep because of that.
You know.
Thinking that was... And the way the wording of it, though, is in Matthew and Luke, whatever makes it sound like it, but the dawning of the first day. And, of course, the word dawn, thinks of sunrise, but, of course... The dawning in that way, that
means
phrase,
the beginning
right, which
of
which
the next day,
Saturday night.
Yes,
and just right after. Yeah.
For them, because their calendar flips at the evening time of the we think about the 14th in an easy way. The 14th of Passover is Passover, right? But that actually starts for us on our calendar. It starts on the 13th in the evening,
right?
And we're like, no, wait a minute. But it does. It starts on the 13th in the evening through the night, to the following day, until the following evening. And that is the time frame of Passover. It doesn't start at midnight from evening to evening. Yeah. So it kind of messes us up in the head.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Just that thought process alone is backwards to us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That whole...
So I don't get too worked up about it.
No, that's the thing. There's nothing needs to be dogmatic about that, other than that he's risen.
But anyhow,
that
why
he died and rose.
And
I'll throw another one over. 3 days. No.
Yeah, 3 days. But anyhow, I know you're a little under the weather.
Yeah, we need to get started.
And your wife is going to insist on you being in bed when she brings your soup back.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
You want to say hello?
Yes, we need to get started on this, but we need to get our timer getting ready to go so we don't get thrown off.
Oh, yeah, that would be a great idea. Start. Oh, it's working right off the bat, too.
Awesome. All right.
Are we going to say hello?
I think we shall.
All right.
Hey, greetings.